Welcome to Freedom Lovin'. This is Kevin, and this is episode number 27. And in just a couple minutes, I have an interview that I did. Actually, was on the Voluntary Life show podcast with Jake DeSillis, and he interviewed me, and we talked about perpetual travel and kind of how I go about that, and just some background on what I do and how I've been able to create that kind of freedom. And that interview was actually done before I left for Thailand, so it's about a month old now. But interesting stuff. So stay tuned for that. And just a few things. I am back in San Diego, and I've been actually back in California for about a week. I spent a few days in the San Francisco Bay Area visiting family, and came down here to San Diego on Saturday over the weekend. And luckily, I got to stay with a friend on Saturday night because I didn't have a place, and this was kind of one of those what not to do as a perpetual traveler type of thing. So I actually didn't line up a place to live in San Diego before I got back, and that's the first time I've ever done this. I thought I tried, and I was on Craigslist, and I did my usual stuff, which is posting on the Craigslist apartments wanted, and then going over all the sublets and temporary apartments and furnished places. And I just wasn't finding anything that I liked within a reasonable amount of rent. So apparently what's happened here in San Diego, and I think all of California, is that the rent prices have just skyrocketed, especially around like the downtown area here. It's just gone in the last year and a half. It's just gone pretty crazy. So I wasn't really expecting that. So I thought something would come up, and then it didn't. And then last week when I was in San Francisco, I was kept searching, and I was talking to different landlords and different places, and I thought for sure one of them would come through. Well, I got back here and I still didn't have anything lined up, and Sunday I spent going around looking at places and scouring Craigslist and trying to find something, and I did find something. But man, it was hard to actually get the place. I mean, not because I'm not qualified, not because I didn't have the money, but the property manager and the realtor involved were just super lazy and just didn't really seem to have any type of urgency in terms of getting anyone into the place. So everything was moving really slowly, but I kind of forced the issue, and I did some things to make it go a little bit faster, and I got in here last night, finally, Tuesday night. So this is being recorded on Wednesday. So pretty stoked about the place. It's in a great part of town, and Little Italy, and yeah. So I'm going to be here for minimum 3 months. So I'm wanting to travel again in February, and I got Mexico on my mind. So that's kind of the tentative plan, but we'll see what happens. I'm pretty happy, I think, being here, and I'm going to enjoy this place as much as possible. I'm also still jet lagged, so that it's been a week since I've been back, and I still have jet lag, which is normal because I've done Asia twice. This is the third time I've done Asia, and the jet lag is pretty much just an ass kicker. So it usually takes me 9 to 10 days to get over it. I'm actually sleeping through the night. Actually, last night was the first night I slept all the way through the night, and I actually got 10 hours of sleep, which happens about twice a year with me. So definitely needed that, but I still have that weird kind of foggy brain fog feeling. So it's just a couple more days. I think I'll be back to total normal. But I think also I need to start working out. I haven't really done that, and that's going to be one of the keys to getting back into it. And it is beautiful here, though. The weather, I think it's like 84 degrees today, mid-November. It's awesome. We always get this weather in November. Like it seems like every year we get this 80-degree kind of Santa Ana wind weather, and people act like it's abnormal, but it's actually something that I remember getting every year. And then it goes into winter. Like by the end of November, we start going into more winter temperatures, especially at night and in the mornings. So I'm going to soak this up and enjoy it. But what else is going on? Bitcoin. I haven't talked about that in a while. Bitcoin is skyrocketing right now. The price is going just crazy. And so this started when I was out in Thailand. Actually, the first week I was there, the price started really going up. And so I was looking at my phone constantly, watching the price go up. And the weird thing is, if I look at on paper, I'm making more money on Bitcoin than I am in my business. So it's kind of like I sort of pay attention to that more, and it's distracting. It's like I mean it's great, but it's also like I really want to focus on business, and I've got all kinds of things going on with my websites, and it's really going well. So I want to make sure that I'm focused on that, but it's kind of makes it tough to focus. And so my opinion on Bitcoin is that, yeah, it's gone up like really ridiculously fast, and it's now, I think this just a little while ago I checked and it was like the price was like 402, and I check a site called bitcoinaverage.com, which kind of averages out all the different indicators out there like Mt. Gox and Bitstamp and everything. And I think this Bitcoin average is pretty accurate in terms of the actual real value. So like, for example, Mt. Gox was at 425, and this one's at 402. So yeah, it's gone. I think when I left for Thailand, I think we were sitting around 140. So that's that's only in like a little over 3 weeks that it's gone up to 400, and so that's quite a rise. And I think I keep hearing a lot of people saying it's a bubble and it's not real, and there's all these reasons why it shouldn't be worth that much. But the bottom line is that it is. I mean, that's what people are paying for Bitcoins now, and I'm still buying. I mean, I haven't bought now since I've been back, but I'm planning on buying even at $400 a Bitcoin. I'm still planning on putting more money into it when I have it. So I really think that it's going a lot higher, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm not just wild-eyed and crazy and overly optimistic. I actually have done a lot of looking into it, research, and I think that we're in a big wave right now with Bitcoin, and it's going to just keep going up for a lot of reasons. One is that there are businesses offering to take Bitcoin as payment all the time. I mean, there's new businesses every day. I read about new businesses. Subway restaurant in Moscow, two of the franchises actually take Bitcoin now. There are several places in the U.S. that I think there was a Subway in, I think it was Pennsylvania, that actually in the U.S. started taking Bitcoin. And there are lots of other independent restaurants and coffee shops that are picking it up. And just heard about two more here in San Diego that are taking Bitcoin. One is in Carlsbad, and I can't remember where the other one is. But yeah, so I think that's the wave is picking up and it's growing, and people there's a lot of different people that are buying Bitcoins. Obviously, there's speculators. There's a lot of speculators, and they're predicting that this wave will just keep going because more and more businesses will take Bitcoin, and there's going to be more transactions in the market. So it likely will keep growing, and the downsides are there, but they're not huge. The downside, I think the biggest downside to me is that some other technology, some other digital currency could come up and take the place of Bitcoin, and then it would drop for sure in value. But the actual technology of digital currencies is not going away. This is something that is definitely part of our future, and I see it being more a part of day-to-day life as we go forward. For example, the real estate industry is completely living in the dark ages. I mean, it's crazy how long it takes to do things. Even just renting an apartment like the one I'm in, I had to fill out all this paperwork, and I actually had to fax it to this guy. And I just hate faxing. It's just the worst thing. And you'd think in this day and age we would be beyond faxing. But anyway, even that, put that aside, just the payments alone, I had to send this guy, this property manager, I had to send him some money so that I could get the keys. And I needed to get the keys yesterday, so that was the whole plan. And we we agreed that I could get the keys yesterday as long as I get the money to him. Well, what happened was when it came down to getting him a check, he's in Riverside, which is a couple hours away or an hour and a half away. And so he said, you can just deposit it in my bank account. Well, that wasn't good enough because it was going to take 2 days with a regular check to show up in his account. So we went through all the other possibilities, and one was PayPal, which would have worked, but apparently he didn't understand PayPal. So this guy is not only was it dark ages, but he's living in like the early 90s or something. So no PayPal, so we couldn't do PayPal. And so I finally just said, well, why don't I do a cashier's check, and I'll get a cashier's check, and then I'll deposit it in your account, so that way when you see it, you know it's there. So he agreed to that. So So that's what we end up doing. He still can't access the funds for 2 days, so they put a 2-day hold on that, which I didn't tell him, and he didn't seem to notice. So he got me the keys anyway. So that all worked out. But imagine if we were using Bitcoin. I mean, all that, none of that would have been an issue. I would have just sent him the payment, and he would give me access to the keys, and we'd be on our way. So that's just another example of where we really need Bitcoin to come into the economy and start working magic. Part of, and kind of another topic, but part of the reason why I like having a landlord that's a bit out of it and doesn't know what's going on, or a property manager or a landlord, is that allows me some opportunities. I rented an apartment in a nice area for a reason, and I probably paid more than what I really needed to pay. But the reason I can do this is there's a hack that I have going that I used last year when I was living by the beach, and that is that I can use Airbnb to rent out my place when I'm gone. Like if I'm taking off for a couple days or a weekend or something, I can get someone in here to pay me quite a bit to stay here for a few days, and that will make up for any rent that I'm paying, above what I wanted to pay. So what you do is you just take pictures of your place, put it up on, set up an account on Airbnb.com, and just figure out what kind of a good price is. You can kind of look at what other people are charging, and then just stick it on Airbnb, and you'll start getting emails, people that are interested in staying at your place. And you can block off on the calendar if you have dates that you don't want it to be available. You can just block them off. And everyone that is coming to you, they're part of Airbnb, so most of them have ratings and reviews of their own. So you can kind of see who's going to be living at your place, and then you have your own rating and review, so they can rate you, you can rate them. It's a great system for just making some extra income. And because it's like if you're going to take off for a few days, you might as well have somebody paying you. It's pretty awesome. I mean, it's the ultimate passive income. It's like, you take a trip somewhere and you're getting paid while you're gone instead of just paying your rent and not getting anything back. So I really like the system. I used it a lot, like I said, when I was at the beach, because I had a desirable location and so many people wanted to rent it. And the only downside is you have to keep it really clean, because people will mark you down even if it's a little, like, it's not perfect. I learned that last time because of one tenant, but otherwise it's a great system. My place right now is a 1-bedroom apartment, and I can rent it out. I did a little bit of research, and it looks like I can rent it out for probably around $130 to $140 a night. So. And that's just because it's in a nice area, it's a nice place, it's new, it's got a washer dryer, all that stuff. So yeah, I get that advantage of, and there's no chance that my landlord would even know that anyone else was here, and I don't even know if it's against my lease contract anyway. But just in case, he doesn't live here, he doesn't even know what's going on anyway, and the owner doesn't live in the area either. So I'm pretty much just doing some self-policing here. Oh, and if you like this show, please leave me a rating and review on iTunes. I'll have a link in the show notes for this show, freedomlovin.com. You can also just go into iTunes and open up the search and just search for Freedom Lovin' Podcast, and you'll see it. Just click on rating and review, and you can give us a 5-star review and your rating. That would be awesome. And that's about it. I rambled a little bit there, but I have the interview with Jake DeSillis coming up, and hope you enjoy that. Go out there and build some freedom, and we'll talk to you soon.
You're listening to The Voluntary Life, where you can hear ideas for finding freedom in an unfree world. Visit thevoluntarylife.com to connect with the show and hear all past episodes. Here's your host, Jake.
Hi, it's Jake here. Welcome to The Voluntary Life. I've done a few podcasts about the topic of long-term travel, and this episode is going to be about even more long-term travel, or permanent travel if you like. And I'm really pleased to have a special guest, somebody who is pursuing the permanent travel lifestyle. It's Kevin Koskela, who's actually the host of the Freedom Lovin' podcast that I appeared on recently. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, Jake. How's it going?
Great, thanks. Welcome to the show, and thanks so much for joining me to talk about this.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me.
So I'm really interested to talk to you because, as you know, I've been doing long-term travel now with my partner for the last couple of years, and we come back to the UK and we spend some time here. But I'm really interested to hear your perspective as somebody who's kind of made a choice, a conscious choice, to really consider themselves a permanent traveller. And I wonder if you could just give a little bit of a background of how you got interested in this and what it means to be a permanent traveller to you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm interested in permanent travel because it kind of represents the freedom lifestyle. I think you and I both have the philosophy, the Harry Browne philosophy of finding freedom in an unfree world. And there's so many ways you can do that. And it starts with kind of freeing up, being able to make income from wherever you are, so you can live wherever you want to live. And so permanent travel, and we talked about this a little bit before the show started, or being a perpetual traveler, or like some people say, a prior taxpayer. Those are that's sort of a mentality rather than an actual, like, this is, I'm going to travel to 47 countries this year, and I'm going to bounce all around the globe constantly. It's I think that's kind of the difference in what people perceive it as and what it actually is. And I look at PT as just a mindset or a mentality where you can do these things if you want to. There's no obligation to continue to travel, but like if I want to live somewhere for a few months, I can just go and do that easily without, disrupting my entire life. And then if I want to stay somewhere for 5 years, I can still be a PT, but I just choose to live in this one place for 5 years because I really like it, and maybe I have friends and family there, and I don't want to be bouncing around. But it's really fascinating to me because it's kind of a new thing in the last few years, really, that we can travel the world and still make an income and actually continue to save money and to do all kinds of exciting things with our lives. And it's something that before the internet existed, this really would be, you probably could do it, but it would be really, really difficult. And now we have so many ways to do this. And I think that, right now it's kind of a weird thing that's kind of out there. Not many people do it. And, most people are kind of questioning my lifestyle because it's like, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? And but I think in the future, at some point, so many people are going to do this that it's just going to be considered the norm. Like, this is what you do. You can live wherever you want.
Right.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a few years ago, it would have been possible if you were significantly wealthy. But now, with the opportunity to have online businesses, you can do it even if you're still sort of developing your wealth, so to speak, because you can earn money online and by moving around. And I do understand what you're saying, that permanent travel doesn't literally mean like every few days you're getting on a plane and going somewhere new, or kind of living quite literally out of a backpack. But I guess it does mean that you don't consider yourself or officially register as being like a permanent citizen resident of your home country from where you grew up and so forth, but you're more flexible in moving around. And is that sort of your approaches to how you undertake permanent travel?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think in travel in general, it just opens you up and it opens up your mind, and it does so many things to help you grow. So I think it's a great thing, and to be stuck in one place for your entire life, I don't think you're really experiencing life to its fullest. So that's kind of that's kind of where I am. And the other thing that I was going to mention is that in this day and age, and you touch on this, you can start a business from another country. Like if you grew up in, like, let's say you're from the US or the UK or something, and the cost of living is pretty high. You want to start a business online, you can just move to somewhere like Thailand for a while and just work there. And your living expenses are just tiny compared to what it would be in the US. And
Yeah.
so it's a great way to get started with a business. And plus you'll meet tons of people that can kind of help you along the way. There's so many people that do this now that you can meet, like that are entrepreneurs that are from all over the world that settle in places like Chiang Mai or Saigon in Vietnam, and you can connect with them really easily. So I think it's just a great thing. And then the other thing is, if you do kind of take on this permanent travel lifestyle, it's kind of the opposite of what most people think. Most people think, oh, I would need a ton of money to travel around the world. I mean, that's kind of the common misperception, is that, oh, you must be doing really well if you're able to do all see all these countries and go all these places. But it's actually the opposite. You can travel the world and run a business and just make enough to get by, and you could do really well. And because your living expenses are so low. And I did last year when I went to Southeast Asia. I was there for 2.5 months, and I was doing the thing where I was bouncing around, and I was in one place for a few days, and then I'd go to another place, and I kept track of all my expenses, and then I compared them to my expenses had I lived in San Diego. And I did a blog post on this, and I ended up saving, the first month I saved like $700. And then the second month it was like $650. So it was like over the course of 2 months, I was $1,300 richer by traveling in all sorts of places versus just staying in one place.
Yeah, we had the same experience in Latin America last winter, even with traveling around. And we went to Argentina and Chile and then up to Mexico. We still, over the course of the winter, saved money compared to living just in the UK. Just sitting in the UK would be more expensive than doing all that travel. And we've calculated this year that if we don't do as much traveling, we're just going to stay in Mexico, we're actually going to be spending about 60% of what we would spend to sit in the UK. So, we're saving almost half of our living expenses just by going abroad. So the idea is geo arbitrage, some people call it, and there's a great opportunity to do that if you can work online. So how long have you been doing this, and what kind of countries have you visited?
Yeah, I guess it goes back to, I think I read the 4-Hour Workweek back in around 2007. And I was already kind of heading that direction. Like that's where, I saw things going. That's kind of why I got into online business, because I thought it would give me more freedom, more flexibility. And then I read that book and I was like, okay, well, this is how it's done. And I got a lot of tips on like from what Tim Ferriss gave in the book on, how to do specific things. And so my first trip was to Sydney, Australia. And I was kind of like, at that point, I was a little bit nervous about having to learn a new language. I didn't want to move somewhere where I'd have to start completely from scratch and learn a new language and all that. I didn't want that to be part of my experience because I thought that would take too much time. But yeah, I started with just going to Sydney because I figured English it would be easy to get by there and everything. And that was great. I mean, it was a great experience. The only problem is I didn't realize it before I left for the trip, but Sydney is way more expensive than where I live in San Diego. Right. So it's kind of not exactly the 4-hour work week, not exactly the way Tim Ferriss had it laid out, where you go somewhere cheaper and you save all this money. I for some reason, I just didn't believe that it could possibly be more expensive, and it certainly was. But it was nice to be able to live there and experience another country, and kind of got my feet wet with that stuff.
Cool. That's really cool. Yeah. And I know you've been to Thailand and various other places in between. So could you say a little bit about how you finance your lifestyle? It sounds like you're doing something very close to what Tim Ferriss talks about in the 4-Hour Work Week, having online businesses that you use and that you sometimes with bursts of activity, but then a lot of passive income following that. Is that how you're financing this lifestyle?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I have products that I sell online, and I started with a site called Try Swim Coach back in 2003, and I had no idea what I was doing when I started it. I thought it would be nice to have a place to go because I was teaching swim lessons at the time to adults, and a lot of them were just happened to be triathletes. So I was developing these programs specifically for them, and I thought, it'd be cool to have a website. And then somebody was telling me about internet marketing, and I was like, okay. So I learned a little bit then, and then I created some products. So I created an ebook, and then later on I created a DVD out of that ebook, and then I've just been selling that kind of thing. So information products online, and it's a great way to keep your overhead really low and be able to make money from anywhere, because people can download the information and you don't have to. I mean, now I do have a DVD that I ship. But other than that, most of my other products are just digital downloads, or where they can join a membership site and then get all the information there. So, and I've done that with other sites now too since then. So I have several websites, and I partner with people that maybe have good ideas but don't know how to market, and then I help them kind of get their business going. And yeah, so everything can be done online. And a lot of times, you're right. I'll do a lot of work for a while, and then very little for a while. So, it's like getting everything going, and then just kind of putting it on maintenance mode.
Right. And I presume even for the stuff, the physical stuff that you ship, I guess you can probably you can outsource that and get some company or somebody to, ship DVDs for you or whatever. So presumably that doesn't necessarily even if you're sending out physical products, you can find a way to do that and still be geographically independent.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I did that for a long time. I had a shipping company that shipped everything. I used to sell a book too. Now it's all digital, but yeah, that's easy. That's really, really easy to do. And there's no barrier there at all. I mean, I know guys that are doing manufacturing and in different countries, and they're able to move around all the time. So yeah, that's really, really easy. Now we do it in-house. My business partner has room to. I mean, because there's not a lot. We don't have a ton of products. It's mainly just a DVD and then a couple of little things. So he can do the shipping. So it saves us a little bit of money to not have to pay the shipper. But yeah, I mean that's not a problem at all.
Cool. So I wanted to ask you about some of the practical issues to do with this lifestyle. But first of all, I guess one of the interesting questions is maybe about relationships. And I'm thinking both in terms of romantic relationships, but also friends and family. If you're moving around, how do you find this affects your relationships and your opportunity to date people or to see your friends and family?
Yeah, overall, it's a positive. It's definitely, for me, it's been a positive. And part of that is that because we live in this kind of virtual world, it's not, and I've talked about this before on my podcast, but it's not like it used to be, where you grow up in an area and you just kind of hang out with whoever happens to grow up in your area and goes to your high school and that kind of thing, and then you find a job, and then you move into some area like a suburb, and then you have your neighbors and you get together for barbecues. That kind of lifestyle, I think, you're not choosing. There's not as much choice there.
Right.
You're not like seeking out people that are like-minded, seeking out people that have similar interests, all that kind of thing. Now, because of the internet and because of all the connection that happens, you can find your, like what Seth Godin calls it, the tribe. So you can find your tribe, and they may be scattered all over the world. So, so I find that I'm getting better at having better connections now that I'm traveling more and going places where I'm meeting people that also are traveling a lot, and then also I'm meeting a lot of these people that are like digital nomads, and so I have a lot more in common with them than I do with just because I live in San Diego and some like I have friends here. It doesn't mean that I feel like I'm obligated to only hang out with them, and I can't hang out with other people. But yeah, as far as relationships go, and in terms of like dating and things like that, I think travel is a net positive. If you are moving around a lot, which I've done this year, in the last few months, it's been kind of crazy with a lot of moving around. It does tend to take its toll, because you're just about getting settled in, and it's like, oh, I got to go.
Right.
But overall, like the whole travel thing and meeting people, traveling makes you a more interesting person. So you're more likely to meet a wide variety of people and be able to connect with them. Like I'm going next summer, I'm planning to go to Romania, and I want to go and visit Eastern Europe and kind of base in Bucharest. And it just randomly, I was at an event like a couple nights ago, and I sat next to this woman, and we were chatting for a while, and I said, "Oh, where are you from?" And she said, "Oh, I'm from Romania." And it's like, oh my God, like that's a great topic. I want to hear all about it. And so, things like that. It's just you're more able to connect with people,
Right.
and and form deep relationships, even if you're kind of moving around. So I don't know, is that kind of what your experience is?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's great, and I can really understand what you're saying about the sort of tribes aspect. And I mean, it's funny, we were talking before the episode started that we're probably going to get an opportunity to meet up in Mexico this winter, which will be really cool because it'll be really nice to be able to meet up in a place completely different to where I come from or you. But we have shared interests, and so that's really cool. And we've also got friends who are in Chiang Mai and in Thailand, and it seems like the way you're describing people with similar interests, finding your tribe, it seems like there are some places where a lot of sort of digital nomads, if you want to call them that, tend to gather. And there's even though you're not in your home country, there's an opportunity to meet people who have a similar kind of lifestyle as you, and who may share some of your interests. And we certainly found that traveling around South America, that we were constantly meeting people who do a lot of long-term travel or permanent travel and getting their perspectives on it. And I think travel definitely broadens your mind. It's what my experience of it is. And I really enjoy meeting people who do a lot of travel because they've always got interesting experiences to tell, and they come from different backgrounds and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Chiang Mai thing is really, it's really an interesting place because of that. Like you said, there's a lot of people from all over the world there, and they're working and they're doing things, they're doing interesting things. And so I spent a few weeks in Saigon in January this year, and I'm in this group called the Dynamite Circle, and it's just an online forum with entrepreneurs from kind of all over the world, and a lot of them are in those cities, Chiang Mai and Saigon, and
right.
So they have a Twitter hashtag for the group there in Saigon, and it was a really cool experience because you could just get up in the morning and look at your Twitter feed and see where people are going. Like if somebody wants to go to lunch, they'll be like, "Hey, I'm going to lunch over here," and then you just go and join them for lunch, and you can have a chat. And then people like to co-work, go to cafes and just hang out and work together, and then go to dinner and like have drinks later. And it's like you have this built-in community, and you don't even have to think. You just you can just go and meet up anytime. And so I really like that, and it's kind of like that whole thing, like right now online, it's all about the communities, and that's what you hear about. And this is something that is, I think, taking place a lot in real life, where people are finding each other based on their interests and their passions and what they want to do with themselves, and instead of just by circumstance.
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool. So I wanted to ask you about some of the practical questions that we've been thinking about, because Hannah and I are thinking of doing even longer term travel. We're about to go away for another 6 months, but we're thinking of doing even more than that. And here are some of the things that I wondered, because you've had some experience on this, what your perspective was. That some of the things that can be tricky, especially if you're moving around a lot, are post and banking and your stuff. Your physical stuff.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on how you tackle those sort of practical issues?
Just get rid of everything.
Yeah, right.
I really don't have much desire to have stuff. I just, as long as I have a laptop and some Wi-Fi, all the other stuff can just kind of go away. It's, I tend to just be really minimalist as much as I can. Although I think I need to get a little bit better, because I'm actually packing this week, and I'm finding that I do have a few boxes, and I'm trying to decide if I want to get a storage unit or not. But I think that's the thing, is like when you kind of get rid of your stuff, it makes life a lot easier in terms of your flexibility. And my thing is I just rent furnished apartments right now. I don't have furniture. I don't have a bed or a couch or anything like that. And since I did get rid of that stuff, I just feel so much better. I don't want that. It's like I can be just as happy with the furnished place. And so it just depends. I mean, some people, they like their stuff and that's what they want to do. But
I
think that's
totally down with that idea. And we've been spending the whole summer getting rid of stuff as quickly as we can, selling stuff off on eBay. So yeah, no, we talked a bit about minimalism before, so I really like that idea. I remember you also saying that when it comes to posts, that you use one of those services like Earth-class mail or something like that. Is that right, or do you just not need a post anymore?
Yeah, no, I actually do something a little bit different, and I do use Earth-class mail for specific things, specifically because you can get a address in Oregon, and there's no sales tax in Oregon, so you can kind of save some money that way. But as far as the way I do the mail, I actually have a bookkeeper, and I have a permanent address in San Diego. And so my bookkeeper I use her address because it makes life a lot easier if you have a permanent address, because that's, I can send all my mail there, and then whenever I fill out any form where I have to put an address, I always use that address. And then as far as credit reports go, if you move around a lot, it's going to affect your credit. So having that address for many years is going to help. And then also just I had a friend, my friend Richard, that was on my podcast a couple episodes ago. He's from the UK, and he came to the US for a 2-month trip. And he moved out of his place, and he sold his car. And when he got to the US, I think he was in Boston, and they didn't believe his story. So they basically took him into a little room and took his phone from him, and they basically interrogated him for a couple hours.
Oh,
because he told the truth. He said, they asked him what his address was, and he said, well, I don't have one because I moved out. And they asked him like all these questions, and they're just like, oh, we don't believe you. So it's like, getting harassed like that at borders, stuff like having an address is a good idea.
Well, I was going to ask about that, because I'm thinking in particular about things like replacing credit cards and stuff like that. That if you are moving around a lot and you need to get banking documents or mainly just credit cards and stuff sent to you, then if you don't have a permanent home address, it can sometimes be complicated. At least it can in the UK, to get banks to send you stuff. Just if they want to know that you have a permanent address. And so it sounds like the way that you've got around it is that you just use a permanent address. And then, but I mean, that must be more difficult for some people who are not going back to the States as much as, like, you seem to go back every now and again to the States and kind of, reestablish your connections there. I guess it might be harder if you're not going back.
Yeah, well then, I mean, you could use Earth-class mail or one of the services like that. I don't know if I know there are several services like that you can use, and I think that's a good way to go.
I guess because they will give you effectively a long-term address that's the same that you can then use to get all your cards and stuff sent to you.
Yeah, and they'll forward anything. You just have to get verified first, and then but once you do, then you can just have them ship anything to wherever you are. So that works out pretty well.
Cool. Now, I wanted to ask your opinion about some of those kind of ideas behind being a permanent traveler, and some of these are more technical than others. But there is an idea called 5 flags theory, which I know that you know about, which is to kind of let me ask you how you understand that, and what your view is of some of the kind of approaches that people take to diversifying themselves geographically when they travel.
Yeah, you mean as far as setting up bank accounts and
what is
where
your
you
view
live
of that
and things
whole
like that?
concept of diversifying your assets and so forth?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think diversifying is awesome. I'm not actually a pro at that, and I definitely need to look into that. I think one of the things that I want to do is get another passport. I think that would be a really big step. I think that also, though, on the other side, people make it more complicated than it needs to be, because it depends on what your goals are. Like a lot of times, like I was in my forum, my Dynamite Circle forum, and there was a guy asking about setting up bank accounts in Singapore and getting a residency, all these questions. Then he's only 22 and he's just starting out. And I'm like, that's a little bit overkill. Like that's something you want to worry about down the road. And I think there's this thought that there's this impending doom that the U.S. government economic system is just going to collapse, and so I got to get everything out now.
Right.
And but people have been saying that for 20 years,
Yeah.
and so there's time. It's like it's not a good situation here, but I think that there's other things that you can do besides trying to run all around the world and open up bank accounts in the most private places and things like that, because like that guy, you remember the Facebook guy that he didn't want to pay taxes on the IPO, the money that he got from the IPO, and then yeah, that's right. So he ended up moving to Singapore, and it's like that's one way to do it, I guess. You could just live there, but I think my strategy right now is very simple, and it goes with my minimalist philosophy, and that's that I use an invisible LLC. It's a New Mexico LLC, and you can set up an LLC in New Mexico legally and not put your personal name on the business name, on the business documents. So you just have a business name, and so that protects you from a lot of people that would want to get at your money. So I feel good about that. It's one of those legal loopholes that not many people know about, but I believe it's the only state in the U.S. that allows you to do that. So it's something that, and I think a lot of people that are kind of in the know are taking advantage of it, but a lot of people are not familiar with it. And you save a lot of money because most of the states, you have this annual fee to keep an LLC going, and in New Mexico, it's just a one-time fee. You set it up, and then you're good to go.
Right.
So that's one way of keeping things kind of private, and it's sort of an offshore account but it's onshore. It's like and then there's Bitcoin. I mean, there's lots of things you can do with Bitcoin. I mean, as you know, it's not Bitcoin itself isn't necessarily a private. It doesn't give you privacy, but there's so many more options when you transfer your dollars or your euros or pounds or whatever into a digital currency like Bitcoin. It just gives you so many more options in terms of your privacy levels.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's helpful, and especially the New Mexico thing for people based in the States. So I wanted to ask you, from your experiences, what, just maybe to give a taste for people who are thinking about this, what your best and worst experiences from permanent travel have been so far?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so best experiences have just been really it's just the people that I've been able to meet. I think that's been the best thing. I mean, going throughout Southeast Asia, I just met so many people, and I traveled solo, and I really love traveling solo because I tend to meet more people rather than traveling with somebody. But yeah, I mean, meeting friends and then meeting like business contacts and that kind of thing. I think that's been the thing that I really loved, and then seeing new places. I really like the constant change of scenery, and I've talked about this recently with somebody about how that idea of like constantly seeing new things, meeting new people, it actually kind of slows time down because your mind is processing each new thing, each new place you're going, people that you're meeting. It's kind of the opposite of what you think. It's like you think time would be speeding up, but it actually slows down. So that's one thing I really, really enjoy. And when I'm sitting in the same place for a long time, time tends to fly by. And so I think that's one of the best things. And as far as anything negative,
but just before you come on to the negative, I was just going to quickly say, that I know exactly what you mean, because I remember it reminds me of a book I read actually by this psychologist who was talking about. It's called the book's called The Philosophical Baby, and it's by a woman called Alison Gopnik, and she does all these investigations into the brain and into sort of the growth of the brain in babies and how babies learn and so forth. And she was saying that if you want to know what it feels like to be a baby, the closest that you can do is go abroad and drink a cup of coffee at the same time. Because the idea is that when you're in a new environment, there's all of this new stimulus around you, and your mind's working overtime to kind of take all this new information in. And that's very much like it's like what a baby experiences of the world. It's a kind of a way of experiencing the world afresh again. And I think the coffee was because it stimulates your mind so much, and that's sort of the way that babies' minds are. So yeah, it kind of brings your brain back to a young state going abroad, I think.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, because if you're in the same routine every day and you see the same things, your mind kind of just blocks it all out. There's no processing of these, buildings and these trees and whatever you're seeing every day. Even like I was in Boulder, Colorado over the summer, and I was there for 3 months. And when I first got there, like the first month, I was just blown away by the scenery there. I mean, there's just this amazing mountain range right next to the city. And I think after like maybe halfway through the second month, I just kind of stopped noticing it. And it's really weird. I thought, I'll never, like, this will always be amazing. But yeah, it doesn't take long before everything just becomes routine.
Yeah. Okay, so what about your worst experiences?
So worst experiences traveling, or just in general, like kind of living as a PT?
I would say related to PT. I mean, maybe it is just traveling, but I'm just trying to give a taste of what you have found that has been the sort of high and low points of this lifestyle.
Yeah, it's basically thinking. One is thinking I was a minimalist, and then as I'm packing or unpacking, realizing how much stuff that I have and lugging that stuff around. So I've gotten better now, but when I first kind of started, I thought I got rid of a whole bunch of stuff, but then I realized, like, okay, I still have 3 boxes full of books. I still have all kinds of stuff that is just stuff that I don't need. But then it would be like a last minute thing where I couldn't force myself to throw it out. So I'd end up just packing it, throwing it into my car or storage unit or whatever. And so that just gets annoying. And then the other thing is, like, I'm going to Thailand coming up for 3 weeks, and so I think the traveling itself, dealing with the airports, dealing with the TSA, all the kind of stress that all that brings on, because at any time, like, you walk through the customs, you walk through the security, your life is just not in your hands at that time, at that point. And I've had so many guests on Freedom 11 podcasts that have had all kinds of horror stories about where they've been detained or where they've been taken aside, and all kinds of crazy stuff happens. So I get like kind of almost I have this natural reaction when I go through those areas, like getting screened, that is kind of almost like an anger that is like deep within me, and I try to just bury it when I go through there, and just sort of like, put the smile on my face, and then just do the kind of positive thoughts, like this is I have to go through this to get to what I want. But that part is just really, really annoying, and I wish that we had a truly free world where we didn't have to have all this documentation and all this kind of idiocracy with the way we're made to take our shoes off, and then every country has little different rules. And I mean, I was in I remember last time I got to Thailand, and I got in the airport, bought a bottle of water, and then I realized right when I got up to security that I was going to have that water taken, and of course, there it goes. So so that's it. And then I'm not really good with jet lag. So if anybody has any tips on how to get over jet lag, I'd love to hear it, because I've tried everything there is possible to try, I think, and I feel like nothing has worked. And so when I fly west to east, it takes me, like, from Asia to the US, it takes me 9 to 10 days to get over it.
Wow. So
that's kind of wasted time. I feel like it's a lot of wasted time where I'm on this weird schedule. I'm not sleeping right. I'm not productive. And so I wish there was a way just to get over that really fast.
Yeah. I know what you mean about all of those things. I've also experienced that the stress of going through customs and border control and everything. And the word that I can't remember where this comes from. I think it was a documentary, but the word that to describe it as security theater, I think, is a great way of describing it. It's like, okay, now I got to take off my shoes at this place, and they want the laptop outside the bag, and the other people don't want it outside the bag, and all of that stuff is kind of stressful. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm knocking on wood, but I mean, I haven't had any like horror stories. I've had some crazy long lines and yeah, some interesting things, but nothing where it was really like fearing for my life or having my cell phone or my laptop taken from me or anything like that. But that can happen at any time to anyone. You know, clearly that there's nobody is off limits. So yeah, that's just kind of one of those things we have to deal with at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to finish it up, I wondered if you had any thoughts or kind of tips and suggestions for long-term and permanent travel interested people. You know, what are some of the things that you think are really worth bearing in mind if people are interested in getting into this lifestyle?
Yeah, it depends on where you're starting from. I mean, if you haven't ever taken a big trip, you know, that's the first step is just buying a plane ticket or getting, you know, accumulating miles on your credit cards and getting a ticket somewhere and just checking it out. You never know what's going to happen. You may love it and you may hate it, and you just kind of taking that step forward. And then, yeah, if you want to go for the permanent travel lifestyle, don't be afraid of the money that it takes. I think that's one of most people's barrier is that they think it just takes all this money to be able to travel the world, and you can do it so inexpensively. It's crazy. Like a guy I had on my podcast a couple weeks ago, his expertise is in accumulating, using airline points and using credit cards to accumulate a lot of points, and basically all the little tricks that you can do to maximize that and maximize your points. And one thing that he's doing is he's taking this flight around the world, and it's costing him a total of $135. And
Awesome.
they're going from the U.S. to Germany. They're going to spend like a few days in Germany, and then they're going to go from there to Thailand, I think. They're going to spend some time in Bangkok, and then they're going to go down to Bali and spend some time there. And then I think there's like one other stop, and then they go back to the U.S. And all of that was $135. So that's just like one example of how to do it. But in terms of if you want to do the permanent thing, income levels, I mean, you need about $1,000 a month, and you can go. I mean, it's like that. That's how easy it is. So if you can find some idea, something that can get you $1,000 a month without having to be there, then you can totally do this. So yeah, that's really it. I mean, the fear, as far as anything else, practical tips, I just say go do it. That's really it.
Awesome, great. Well, I want to make sure people can find your podcast and your blog, and I really enjoy both of them. So where is the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, just go to freedomlovin.com. There's no G there. It's freedomlovin with an N at the end and .com. And yeah, that's where my podcast and blog is. And I'd love to have more people visiting the site. So but it's been great chatting, Jake. Thanks for having me on.
That was great. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you for listening to The Voluntary Life. If you have feedback about the show, please email jake@thevoluntarylife.com. If you enjoyed this program, please share the podcast with your friends or click the donate button on thevoluntarylife.com.